Welcome to the Rant Live. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm happy to report that the last time the Cubs played, they won.
Hey,
so that's the little bit of good news that I've got. So you may as well just want to unplug from here. So it just pretty much just goes downhill. Well, except Marcus Stroman performance, we can talk about that too. But otherwise, yeah. A lot of things. These are hard days. I was thinking back to 2016 days, or just really whenever the core, the I don't even know if we want to call them the core, but the guys who used to win games was all together. And man, have we come a long way and have been told a lot of things and have not seen a lot of things transpire. And so it gets a little frustrating, I think, trying to kind of watch this and figure out where it's all going. But the upside to it all is that the guys that are down in the minor leagues, the prospects are raking. And so that's positive.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's frustrating because we keep seeing a lot of the same stuff. Now, I know one of the things we'll talk about, David Ross finally followed the advice that we dispensed during our last show, although it took a couple games to get there. There are just some things that happen that define, and this was the case with Madden, and I suppose it's going to be the case with anybody, but it just continually, for me, goes back to this idea that we know it's an imperfect roster, right? I mean, that's obvious, and I don't mean in the sense that there's no such thing as a perfect roster. I just mean like this. They obviously did not.
It has a lot of holes. There are a lot of holes.
They just didn't go out there in free agency and build like a lefty power hitter and things like that, right? That's what I'm talking about. There are some holes that could have and should have been addressed that were not, and as a result, the lineup just doesn't have the balance that you would expect. However, when you do things like, and here's the problem, and I love, and thankfully nobody really came out and tried to actually me on a bunch of these things. You say like, you'll come up with, well, but actually the other side of that, no, I don't need to hear that. Eric Lauer, right, who the Brewers put up there, was he Saturday starter and lefty, but has pitched to reverse splits throughout his entire career. Yeah, because Hauser was Friday, right? Adrian Hauser was Friday and Lauer was Saturday. Has always pitched to reverse splits, and this year has pitched to very extreme reverse splits, by which I mean he's actually much worse against left-handed batters. So what do the Cubs do? They have 9 right-handed batters against him. I don't care that they don't have, like, we're not talking about, oh, you should have Jason Hayward batting a leadoff. No, but Alfonso Rivas wasn't in the lineup, right? And if you're going to have happen there, well, he's batting from the right side in that situation. You have left-handed hitters, right? And not many of them, and that's the other problem. But they should have been in there in that game. And outside of the home run that Yan Gomes hit, the Cubs didn't do anything. They had 3 hits. No. They got absolutely destroyed by Eric Lauer because, in part, they had an all right-handed lineup, which is just a bad way to attack. You can't just look at handedness and say, oh, this guy's a lefty. So and other managers have done the same. You look at his career, and they stack righties against him, which is incredibly stupid because he's better against them. Like, it's things like that. It's why are you not putting Rivas in the leadoff spot earlier when he's clearly your best on base guy, has a little bit of pop, and if you want him to DH one day, you can. But honestly, he's better at first base. I don't get why. Like, clearly we're seeing, and I know you touted Madrigal before. It's every game kind of seems like, boy, this dude needs to figure something out. Ortega's been up there, and you had lamented him being up there and what that might mean for him. It's just it feels like David Ross is the last person to kind of realize some of these things. And that's sort of the problem because he's the guy that's making the decisions.
Well, and if you're going to use analytics, you need to use them correctly. I mean, you can't just blindly be like, all right, there's, if you've got a lefty on the mound, I'm just going to throw righties out there. You do have to look to see kind of how they perform against righties versus lefties and use those analytics correctly. And there's no doubt that the most frustrating part of this all is that the Cubs, Ross could be doing more, and it feels like the Cubs could be winning more games. They could be putting themselves in better position to win these games than they are. And so that's where it's like, is Ross trying to win games? Is he? It's hard to understand exactly what he's trying to do here because, as we mentioned on our last show was it Friday, I think, it's like it seems like you would want to go with Rivas up top. I mean, he's been successful. He's got on base percentage of 500 right now. He looks really good defensively at first base. He looks good, and I know they want to give Schwindel a shot, but what are they giving Schwindel a shot for? I've heard that said, but it's not like this is a 24-year-old kid. The guy's like, what is he, 31 years old?
Yeah,
I get it.
Need
I'm not writing him off, but I'm saying you're giving Frank Schwindel a shot at first base doesn't make any sense because he's in no way, shape, or form can he be part of the future of this team. And so that's why it's like, are you just giving him a shot to play Major League Baseball? I mean, that's awesome. That's a great story, and I love it. And I'm not downplaying that in any way, shape, or form. But I'm just saying, if you're trying to build a winning team, there's a reason why you put a guy in there like Alfonso Rivas and some of the younger talent that maybe you have, and maybe you start looking at the timing of bringing up some of these prospects, but they don't want to start the clock, the service time clock ticking on them.
Well, and so
that's kind of an issue too.
I mean, there's so few outside of Brennan Davis who, again, he has not been lighting the world on fire at AAA. I mean, there are some guys who are hitting very, very well who at this point, and I should make a correction. The Cubs did end up with 6 hits on Saturday. They'd had 3 hits in each of the previous 2 games, but they still scored the 1 run, and they struck out 15 times. And so there's the other concern, right? And that's what you've got is that they struck out 15 times against 3 walks on Saturday. Again, this is against Lauer, and the dude struck out 11 batters. He struck out 13 the start before, so at least that's an improvement for them. But 11 strikeouts to 1 walk, I'm going to continue to say that, and this is one of them, and I will probably go ahead and look at this. Tyler Mahle ate him up like this before, and they never adjusted to the way and this was like, even if you go back to when Trevor Bauer, who has been suspended 2 years by Major League Baseball, which is nice to see, when he and Mahle were both in Cincinnati, it was very obvious that the Reds had seen the book on the Cubs, had gotten the book and knew what it was, and those two both adjusted their pitching, whether it was their cutters or sliders, and I don't know exactly what now. I wrote about it a couple times a couple years ago that the Reds very clearly knew how they could beat the Cubs. The Cubs, on the other hand, had no idea. They were just baffled by these guys. And again, I look at this like, okay, some moron with a blog can write a lineup post and look at the stats and look at the performance of this opposing pitcher and say, hey, here are the things he does well. And, I'm not saying I know how to necessarily beat him, but I know how not to attack him. And what did the Cubs do? They just went right. I mean, it felt like General Custer, man, like what Custer's last stand there, baby. Like, what are you doing? There's no military strategist on earth would have done what you did. That's why you got destroyed. In the same way, you could look at this and easily look, and other people on Twitter were doing the same. I'm not saying it was me alone, but they have access to a lot more stuff than we do. And there are certain things that I can totally understand, like, hey, you've got stuff that tells you this. But there are a lot of decisions that are being made. And unless, and I know a lot of people said, well, maybe other people have input. But I mean, unless Jed Hoyer is trying to tank and he's saying this is the lineup you're going to put out there, and I guess
that's what it feels like. I have to be honest.
I mean, that'd be the only explanation. You can say, like, why in the hell are you doing this? And it's that, well, the front office told me this is what I have to do. And they're doing the things that they need, because this team, for as good as they looked in those first 3 games against Milwaukee, and, they kind of carried some of that, and there were some games when, boy, they really put it together. These last few, and outside of Stroman pitching a gem, it was only 2-0. It's not like the offense carried them and did anything, and they scored
that's
right
my
away.
Point. I'm with you 100% there. It's like, if you need an outing like Stroman just had yesterday to win a game, you're going to be lucky to win 60 games.
Yeah. because that's another 5 hits, right? So their last 4 games now, at least
5
they've
hits,
gone 3
2
hits,
runs,
3 hits,
including
6
a
hits,
wisdom
5
home
hits.
run.
Right. And where are the runs coming from? This is the first time. So they went 3 games in a row with 1 run, right? They had and it was they scored a run on Horner getting picked off. Wisdom scored a run on a wild pitch. They scored 1 run on a Yan Gomes homer, and they scored 2 runs, one of which came from a Wisdom homer. So of the 5 runs they've scored in the last 4 games, 2 of them have been solo homers. 1 was on a wild pitch. 1 was on a pickoff where Horner got hung up. So then, and Suzuki got a run scoring double. So they've actually, of their last 5 runs, only 3 of them have come from a hit actually driving those runs in. 2 of those have been homers, and nobody's been on base. Like, they're not doing the things. And yesterday, again, they struck out 12 times to 2 walks. So in the last 2 games, they've struck out 27 times with 3 walks. That's worse than last year's team. This year's team's supposed to be the opposite of that. So what the hell is happening? Because when you don't have power, when you do not, yes, Wisdom got with the 1 homer, and it was nice. But unless you're hitting 5 home runs, I tell you what, 27 strikeouts to 3 walks, man. That or 5 walks, I think they walked 3 times the other one. So, or was it 11-1? Whatever the case, they're striking out a shitload, and they're not walking much, and that is not good at all.
It's not. So hopefully you didn't tune in to cheer up, because if you did, it's hard, man. I mean, listen, I would love to be. I want to be the first person banging the drum when the Cubs start doing well, and certainly there are a couple positives, like Marcus Stroman and the prospects raking, but we've already mentioned those, and we're only 12 minutes into the show.
There's not a whole lot else out there that you can look at and be like, yeah, man, I feel really good about this aspect of this team.
And I mean, Seiya Suzuki has plummeted back to earth, which is, I'm really surprised that it's been that stark. He's been striking out a lot. He's still getting hits in there, and I think he's gonna figure it out. He had a double on, was it Saturday? No, yesterday.
Yesterday, he drove in the second
Rivas. Run. And so, he doesn't look totally lost or anything like that. I mean, he's been taking a lot of, when I say a lot, more than 2 third strikes right down the middle, like fastballs, which has been kind of weird to see. But it's nothing that you're all that worried about. It's not as concerning as Madrigal, for example, who probably does need to be sent down to AAA. He's got options left. And I'm going to be real surprised if that doesn't happen very soon, if he doesn't break out of this funk. I mean, it doesn't do him any good being up here struggling if he can't figure out kind of what the deal is, because he's not at all what he was advertised to be, which was kind of that high contact guy. And he's actually the opposite of that, right? I mean, he's not making any contact, and he's striking out a ton.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you look at yesterday's game, like 2 strikeouts. Then you got a hit, right? But I mean, he's batting .210 with a .527 OPS, and multiple strikeouts. Like the whole deal with him. You knew you weren't going to get any power, but he's supposed to be putting the ball in play and not striking out, right? Like very, very little. Not very little relative to the Cubs that we've seen the last few years, but just very little overall. But when you have this team that, again, has gone double-digit strikeouts far too frequently now, I guess they only had 9 on Friday, I think. But
only,
when it's 15 and then 12, and you look at that and it's averaged out, that just it is very concerning. And you almost wonder. I mean, our team. So again, we've talked a lot about their propensity for contact and how that leads to far too many double plays, a lot of ground balls. Our team's now just looking at it going, hey, wait a minute. If these guys are going up there hacking and they're putting balls in play all the time, let's just go after them. Let's attack them. Like, or if I'm an opposing pitcher And realistic, I'm not saying you only got to worry about Wisdom, but Contreras hasn't really been doing much. He's been hit or miss.
He'll come
I guess
around
literally.
eventually.
I'm sure he will. And Hap has done pretty well. But if you look at it, say by and large, this lineup, and you say, especially with Wisdom, again, you got a lot of boom bust there. So I'm willing to take my chances that I'm gonna hang one, and this guy's gonna pound it out of the yard. But by and large, 6 of the guys in any given lineup don't scare me, and I'm just gonna attack them because you know what? I know they're up there wanting to swing and hit the ball, and if they do put it in play, I think they're gonna hit a lot of grounders, and I'm gonna get a lot of double plays. But why would I mess around and try to nibble with these dudes? Because if I do that and they can still put it, but we've seen that's one thing we saw from Suzuki, that he can handle those pitches on the fringes and drive them into the opposite field and really handle the bat really well. But like you said, all of a sudden we're seeing him watch these perfect strikes. And I think it's maybe a change in that initially, he figures, okay, I'm seeing slider away. I'm looking for that as a put away pitch, when instead guys are like, wait a minute, this dude's super patient. It's almost like he's looking for that edge pitch. Fine, I'm just throwing one down the dick and I'm going to get him. And it's like that. I mean, that's what it feels like other teams are doing now. And the strikeouts are not necessarily coming on. It's not like the Javi throw one in the opposite batter's box and he's just waving at it because he's got no chance. I mean, this feels like they're just swinging through strikes and there's nothing they can really do about it because other teams know damn well, pitch them aggressively. Because what's the worst that happens? You don't walk anybody, so you got nobody on base. All right, 1 or 2 guys in this lineup might hit a homer. Okay, I'm willing to take that chance.
I mean, they're what they scored 4 runs in the entire series.
Yes,
4 runs in a 3-game series. I mean, and it wasn't much better against Atlanta, where they scored 6 runs in one of this games, right? But the other 2 games, they scored 1 and 2 runs total.
Yeah.
So I mean,
this is exactly the problem, and this has been my fear the whole time. And I don't want to sound like Chicken Little, but at least before, the outages of the scoring outages were frustrating, but there was a potential, and I know again this team scored 21 runs the other day, but there was a potential that with one swing things could turn around, or at least when guys got hot, you could bury another team right away and do so consistently, or at least you felt the potential was there. And that's not the case, because now it's again, they're still striking out at a very high rate, or they have been lately. They're not getting on base very often. They are hitting into too many double plays, and there's no power. I mean, that's the part that's really, or when it'll come, okay, cool, solo homer, great. Look how good that, okay, Yan Gomes, woo, first Cubs homer. And that was like the only time they threatened. That was it. There just was not enough going on there. And when you have the guys, again, like Schwindel, supposed to be the contact bat, right? That was a big part of it. And he had a little bit of pop too, but again, not much swing and miss in his game. But he's batting 222 or whatever. Madrigal's supposed to be that contact bat. That hasn't happened. And when you take that and compound it by putting Rafael Ortega, who hasn't hit, at the top of the order, like the lineup construction on any given day does not seem to have much rhyme or reason outside of maybe the Joe Madden idea that you put a guy up there to try to get him kickstarted and get him hot. And I just, that is baffling to me, because it hasn't worked, and it just fundamentally doesn't make any sense, because baseball players are creatures of habit. You can't just, yes, maybe once in a while you can shake something up, but if a dude's never really batted leadoff, some guys just don't do that well. They just can't handle it for whatever reason. And you're just hurting the team and that player by doing that. And, and then you put Rivas up there for a day. Cool. He should have been up there before. I think I even wrote in posts like he's batting 5 spots too low.
Yeah, I mean, he had a hit and a walk. I mean, he's not setting the world on fire, but the leadoff man doesn't necessarily need to set the world on fire. They just need to get on base.
Yeah, and he did.
It seems like a very
twice.
simple concept.
Yeah, I mean, but he scored one of the 2 runs that they had, right? So, like, what is a leadoff hitter supposed to do? Get on base and score runs.
Yeah, you got on base half the time,
there
right?
You go.
I mean, you got.
There you go. That's what you mean to do. 500 OBP, I'll take that. But
yeah, all day long.
Yeah, you think?
And so it's like, like at what point do we resign ourselves to saying, you know what, this just ain't happening? And the reason I say that is because, I mean, if we're trying to be realistic about things here, what we've seen in this first month is very discouraging from an offensive perspective. You cannot expect the offense to get much better than it's been with the lineup they have in place right now. And
Andrelton Simmons will fix it, John. When he comes back, it's all good.
And the pitching has been, kind of as inconsistent as you would expect it to be honest with you. I mean, I didn't expect Stroman to be as bad as he started, but he's pulled it back together again. So, I mean, Smiley has countered by being much better than we expected. So I'd almost say that Smiley has kind of offset the negative impact that Stroman has had.
But I think I fear that that's going to switch.
Yeah.
You guys are going to flip places here real soon.
Probably. And then Hendricks has kind of been Hendricks, right? I mean, like what we've seen from the last couple years is there's no surprise to see on Friday, he went 4.1 innings pitched, 6 runs on 7 hits, 3 home runs. That they gave up 6 home runs and just got annihilated. Every time you turned around, it seemed like the Brewers were hitting a home run. And, to lose 11-1 and then to come back on Saturday and then lose 9-1. The weird thing that happened on Friday was, like Hendricks got just crushed. Norris, Newcomb, and Roberts combined to get crushed over 3 innings. They gave up 5 runs and 3 home runs combined. But Leiter, who was the starter until Friday that I was aware of, came in and just shut the door down, shut it down, slammed the door, I should say. 1 inning, no runs, 3 Ks. I mean,
yeah.
Here's a guy
it was like a going away present. Like, hey, buddy, go out there and wear one.
Then he gets shipped back to Iowa the following day for St. John, who comes up and proceeds to get just completely crushed. Steele didn't look particularly great. He hasn't looked very well, very good, whatever, at all his last few outings. And here's the funny thing is I looked Saturday, the bullpen got between Rucker and St. John over 4 innings. They got 10 Ks, 10 strikeouts over 4 innings. Now they gave up 5 runs in doing that, but the 10 strikeouts, and 3 home runs, probably not so good. But then again, on Saturday, Efros was really good, right? 1 inning. Mm-hmm. So we've had at least one pitcher pitch really well in each of the games this series. Unfortunately, that one pitcher for Friday and Saturday only pitched 1 inning, and then all the other pitchers just got completely shelled. And then Stroman, 7 innings, no runs, 2 hits, a walk, 5 Ks. He led with the slider, and I think typically he leads with the sinker. And so I don't know if that was just something that he felt more comfortable with, or it was based on the hitters he was facing that made him kind of change that approach up a little bit. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to when we had our show on Friday. He was coming off of a decent start in Atlanta, and I think I think even heading into that. So as we progressed through, right, we had said, I think we'd say I don't think he comes all the way back against Atlanta, but I was like, I think he starts to dial things in, and then I think he'll be really good moving forward. And part of that just has to do with it could have been as simple as, like you said, it might have been the matchup a little bit. There's some times too when a guy might be just throwing a pregame bullpen, and this cuts both ways. And he's working through his pitches, and just a couple of them feel really good, and maybe the slider is just jumping really well, and he's seeing good movement on it, and it feels right. And sometimes it's a matter of finding whatever that pitch is. I mean, most guys obviously will work off the fastball, right? But he's got a really varied repertoire, and he can work with a bunch of different things. And it may just be that the mechanics feel better on that slider, and that you can actually play off of that then to gain the confidence in other pitches, because with him, it's about being repeatable. right? And getting that mechanical, that flow state to where you just feel like you're going out there and pitching. And he looked more comfortable and confident. And I think that has to do partially with the slider. Again, it's how you attack different guys, but mix of things. But he just looked much better, and obviously he was much more efficient with just the one walk. Not a ton of strikeouts, but I mean, realistically, that's when Stroman is going right. He's a ground ball. He should be pitching to a bunch of contact and getting the ball on the ground, and that's a lot more efficient. I think that's something we all lose sight of because as strikeout numbers have gone up, you're like, that's cool, but I mean, Greg Maddux even said it like the perfect game would be one in which he throws 27 pitches and gets 27 outs. You never throw a single swinging strike. Get everybody to swing and hit a ball in play on the first strike, the first pitch of every at bat. And I think that's one of the things. It seems like I don't know if he was trying too much before. It just didn't look like he was. It looked like he was in the zone and not trying too hard. He wasn't. He was digging at the rubber, but he wasn't doing the hitchy, and kind of.
Yeah.
He just looked.
And
more
he said that he hasn't felt real comfortable. And you talk about the ground ball rate. I mean, yesterday he threw 62.5% ground ball rate. The only time he's been above 50% the entire season was on April 10th against Milwaukee when he only gave up one run on 2 hits. So, his best 2 performances have been 76.9% ground ball rate and a 62.5. And then outside of that, you're like 28.6, 46.7, and 23.8. I mean, that's such a wild variety of, it's just it's crazy to see like the inconsistency from him when typically he's been a pretty consistent guy.
Yeah, he really has been. And I wonder how much of that is there's, he seems to certainly embrace the moment and the hype and all that stuff. But I do wonder whether some of that got the better of him early on, right? Where he really wanted it. He had set up this whole thing of move to a new team. And I wonder if he almost built it up too much in his own mind to where he was just trying to do too much and maybe forcing it a little bit and needed to kind of, I was going to say needed to get beat around a little bit, but that could be part of it, to where you sort of have to recenter yourself and look at things again and just get back to some of the very basics of what you do, settle in and move on and kind of, strip the ego away a little bit. And I don't mean that like, I'm not saying he's a diva or anything like that. I'm just saying sometimes you hype that up so much and you have so much confidence that it actually ends up working against you. So, no, I mean, he's looked really, really good. Certainly this last one, and hopefully that continues, moving forward. But I think it will. Now the only problem is just, first of all, do they even? I hesitate to say it. I know a lot of people have already talked about it. Like, is he pitching to see where he's going next in terms of what the Cubs are looking at? Because if this continues, if they're this bad,
it's hard to think not. It's hard to think not.
Yeah, I mean, because look, if he's pitching really, really well, and they can only eke out a 2-0 win every 5 days, and the rest of the time they're getting beat 9-1 and 11-1, and so on and so forth because they can't score any runs. Like you said, if it takes him putting together a gem just to get a W at all for them, that's going to get old, man.
So what you're saying is the upcoming series against Arizona may be a really good, intense series.
Yeah, I mean, hey,
some competitiveness.
They need to face more teams they can beat.
Yeah, if they can beat them. I mean, right now Arizona's got a better record. In fact, the Cubs have the 3rd worst record in the National League.
Thank God for the Reds, huh?
Tied with Pittsburgh. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the challenge Jed Hoyer has in front of him is can he catch the Reds?
How bad is that? Like, I mean, that truly does. It's getting to the point where it's starting to feel like they're tanking. It feels, and I want to be very, very clear about this. I don't mean the players are tanking, right? The players under no circumstance want to lose ever. But it doesn't feel like, and some of this again is circumstantial because nobody expected, or maybe some people did, but I don't think anybody. Excuse me, I had to stifle a yawn there. I don't think anybody expected, Madrigal to
Are the
pitch
Cubs
or to hit.
boring you?
Yeah, well, yes, that is absolutely true. But there's just certain things we're seeing from them that don't fly to expectations.
Yeah, like the construction of the lineup, for example. It
Yeah.
seems very obvious. There are certain things that seem very obvious. Like, for example, I mean, it shouldn't have taken this long to figure out Ortega doesn't belong at the top of the lineup. And yet it did. Here we are a month into the season, maybe not quite a month, but it shouldn't have taken 20 games or whatever to figure it out.
Too many games, whatever the case. And I mean, that's
22 games.
That was just a weird. I don't get it. I don't understand the appeal there outside of maybe for the first little while you could see that. Oh, okay, yeah, we'll try this. But it's like, no, it's not your best option, right? Given the players you have, the construction of this team, the way it is here. But to do that, I think as consistently. But I mean, if you look at it, they use 3 different leadoff hitters in 3 different games in Milwaukee, right? And 2 of them between Ortega and Madrigal have just not been hitting well. I mean, you talk about right now they're batting within a point of each other at 204 and 203. And Ortega at least has a 590 OPS to Madrigal's 520.
And that's another thing I don't understand is that I've been a proponent of saying, listen, move Madrigal to the top of the lineup, keep him there. Let's just give him a chance. But what doesn't make any sense is you've got a guy who's struggling, and then you put him up at the top of the lineup for 1 game. And they've done this now twice. And it's like, why are you taking a guy that's struggling and moving him all over the place?
Yeah, either do or don't,
Yeah, it's like if you want to plug him into the lineup, at the top of the lineup, and Andy's a struggling hitter, you just keep him up there. Yeah. I mean, give him a chance to break out of it and don't keep moving him all over the place. It's like that mindset and just it's just not there for some reason. And it seems like a really basic approach.
Yeah, and I do want to, because a couple people have been asking about roster cuts. Locke St. John got optioned down, and Ethan Roberts went to the IL, so they're at 26 on the roster. So nobody really, I mean, St. John got sent down and he was only brought up because Leiter was optioned back down, and so St. John.
And so for a month, they have the ability to carry 1 extra pitcher, right?
They can still carry more pitchers. So I mean, I would anticipate, again, there's probably going to be a move. This would be my guess. But again, so what did we say though? And here's the thing: they don't need to make a move yet to carry extra pitchers because they have not only today off, but they've also got Thursday off after the 2-game with the White Sox. So they don't need those extra pitchers yet. And as we talked about on the show the last time, we were discussing, and Leiter was one of them for sure. And then we were talking, would it be Ortega or Hermosillo? And that's another one that's been disappointing is Michael Hermosillo has just not, he made a really fantastic play in the outfield the other day, although he had another one that wasn't so fantastic. And he's just not really showing that same sort of dynamic kind of addition that I think we thought, last season when he came up that we're going to see a shortened period, he got hurt. But anyway, we talked as well. I said, what they're going to do, I said, I think they're going to find a way to put somebody on the aisle. They're going to kick the can down the road, right? And I totally understand that because you don't want to DFA a guy if you can avoid it. And so putting Roberts on the IL was a way to avoid that because we talked about possibly Roberts or Steele going down, being optioned to AAA as well. Now, they don't need to make that decision, but we might see something tomorrow from a position player movement, if they want to bring another pitcher up. But again, I would anticipate that we don't see them do anything from a position player standpoint until after the White Sox series, just because they have those extra days and maybe even another day after that. But because of the 2 days off in 4 days, their pitchers can be very well rested, and I don't think they need to worry about it as much. But I don't know. We're still on board with, are you still thinking Hermosillo? You thinking Ortega? You thinking they're going to try to move one? I mean, I think one of those two is probably the likeliest candidate, and they would probably DFA him and then try to move him somewhere for cash considerations or something like that. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's up in the air, to be honest with you. I mean, what Hermosillo's got, does he even have 2 hits?
And the thing he's got going against him too is he's a right-handed batter, where Ortega's a lefty, and they have so few left-handed
he's got
bats.
2 hits.
Yeah.
2 hits in 24 at bats. That's just, and he's looked really lost in the field.
Yeah, and he's with Suzuki locked in there, with Happ playing well and locked in where he is, and with Hayward not going anywhere, you've just got too many guys up there. And, as they start looking at, if they are, again, it won't be Davis anytime real soon, but the guys who they've got coming up who are most likely to get some time, right? They've got some outfilders, right, who could be moving their way up there. And it sort of feels like one of those two guys. And again, I think Hermosillo is unfortunately one of them out there. But yeah, it's maybe something happens tomorrow. They're not going to make a move today. And as soon as I say that, we'll get done with the show, and there'll be a media alert from that they DFA'd somebody. But generally, there's no need to, right? Because they're not playing a game today, so it'd be silly to make a roster decision. I definitely don't think I could see it happening if they get one of those funky games where the starter only goes 2 innings and they got to burn through a bunch of bullpen guys on Tuesday, and then you need to have somebody else up. But yeah, I'll be shocked, even though a lot of people have said they should do it. I will be at this point. I'd be completely shocked if they DFA'd Hayward, unless it's like one of those where they've got something in place to where they know a team, like they've worked something out behind the scenes. His agent's been talking with people, and they're like, "Hey, so and so will, hey, the Braves will pick you up, or some, what the Angels, I don't know, wherever some team that's maybe that's competitive that needs a left-handed hitting solid outfielder." Or a defensive replacement kind of a guy, and they like to pay him the league minimum because the Cubs have to eat the salary. That's the only way I could possibly see it, that the Cubs could somehow trade for some cash considerations if he does anything. But they have no reason to
DFA him. If they were trying to win, then it would make sense. But at this point, I mean, honestly, he's not playing that poorly.
Although he's actually playing pretty decent, so maybe they got to get rid of him now because he's playing better than what they thought he was.
Yeah, they can still eat some of the salary.
You were supposed to suck and lose us some games, man. What are you doing?
They can get somebody to take some of the salary, right, versus eating all the salary. So if he does continue to play well, and maybe that's a player they flip at the deadline and they eat most of his salary. But I mean, at this point, it's all or something less than that,
yeah,
which is the best outcome, I think, in the situation. And I think it'd be a service to Hayward too, because he deserves to be someplace. He's a good guy. He's a great guy in the locker room. He's not a terrible player, but he's been, not great for the Cubs when the Cubs had some better offensive firepower. And now that he's kind of like one of the better Cubs hitters, it's just says a lot about where we've come from and where we are.
It's just I don't know if it feels like not from a performance standpoint, but it feels like sort of one of those Joey Votto things where it's like Votto is somehow still there in Cincinnati with whatever that dumpster fire is that they've got going on, right? He's like leading the dance band on the Titanic as it sinks. And that just sucks for him. Like I'm amazed at some point that those two sides, like, credit to him for not just demanding a trade out of there and for being just a stand-up guy the whole time. But it's surprising to me that they didn't just go to him and say, like, Joey, dude, we are going to suck really, really bad. You're going to lose 100 games here your last couple seasons. Let us move you somewhere. Let us send you somewhere. We will get some prospects back. You're going to get to go play for a winner finally. Let us do this service for you. That just seems like it's something. And I mean, maybe he just loves it there and doesn't want to. That just seems very odd to me.
This would seem like the year they would do that if they're going to do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was a few times when I thought they were going to, but it's like that with Hayward. If they could find a place to move him that they knew he was going to, because, and let's be honest, nobody's picking him up. Like the Reds would not claim Hayward off waivers, right? They would not do that or go sign him if he clears and then he's gone and he elects free agency. They're not signing him to the veteran. Like he doesn't do them any good. There's no point to that, even at a veteran's minimum. But there are some teams out there that could maybe benefit from that, especially if somebody gets an outfielder who gets hurt. I mean, that was a thought last year with Acuna. There were some thoughts that maybe that makes sense. They opened that up, and obviously they used Peterson as their outfielder and leader. So we'll see. But yeah, it's frustrating because this team is better than what we've seen from them, especially lately.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's not so good that they can get away with the mistakes. This is beating a dead horse at this point, but there's the little things that they just don't do very well. We talked about their lack of aggressiveness on the bases. We've talked about too many double plays. We've talked about the leadoff spot and just the way the roster, the lineup is constructed. There's a lot of things that aren't. It's not even a matter of that they're not taking advantage of different leverage points. Is that they're almost actively reducing leverage and reducing what little margin for error they've already got built in there, and just creating a situation in which they need to play almost perfect baseball in order to win, which is kind of what we saw on Sunday with Stroman. It's just really.
And by perfect baseball, you mean pitching, because the offense wasn't there. They only had 5 hits.
And scored that, those 2 runs.
It's going to be very, very rare that you win a game with only 5 hits.
Yeah, especially and I guess one of them was a homer. So that helps.
Was a homer, and then Suzuki doubled to drive in Rivas,
and that was really.
I think.
But did he single? But even the other ones, like I said, they went 2 games in a row where they only had 3 hits and 1 run and a piece in them, but neither run was driven in by a batted ball. Right? You had a wild pitch and a pickoff. Like that's what the offense. It's like a little league offense. I mean, that's truly. That's like what you're getting into at this point, where you're relying on the other team to screw up in order for you to score. And if the other team doesn't screw up and doesn't walk 6 batters and doesn't have wild pitches and doesn't have a ton of errors, you're going to lose. And that's the frustrating part, is they've set it up to be the opposite. Like, again, that 2016 team. And listen, I'm not comparing these two in terms of we thought this team would be just as good. We knew they weren't going to be super good, right? But when you talk about a really good team, they could go out there and they could weather mistakes. They didn't have to play perfect baseball because they had enough complementary skills, pitching, hitting, defense, that even if one of them was not going well for that game, they could still win and sometimes cruise to victory because the other 2 facets were working. And now it's not a matter. It's like you've got to almost have all 3 of them. And they got kind of lucky in that, they didn't have the offense clicking in this last one. But it's all got to be working really well for them, because there's no, I guess, and I think I'm only just starting to realize this, and maybe this doesn't bear out over time, but this team doesn't have a lot of mediocrity. They either go out there and they do really, really well, or they do really, really bad. There's very little in between, because how often are they scoring 4 runs and getting beat 5-4 or 4-3 or 6-5? It's 9-1, 11-1, 21-0. They'll win. It just, yeah. I don't like it.
Well,
man.
here's the downside is that we're going to have to figure out a way to deal with this, as are all of our listeners, for the entire season. So, like I said, the minor league guys, Pete Crow Armstrong is absolutely a beast.
Yeah, he's looked really good.
It'll be interesting to see where he moves to and how quickly he moves. But he's playing right now where he's at, Myrtle Beach.
He's at Myrtle. Right? Yeah, he can't be long for there, man. He can't be. He's got to be ticketed for South Bend pretty soon.
You got to think. I mean, he's just absolutely just tearing it up. Where was I looking at in the system? He's just absolutely, he's got a 202 WRC plus, which is insane, a 382 average. He is striking out 14.8% of the time, but he's walking 12.3% of the time. I mean, this guy is just, he's just an athlete too. I mean, in the field, it'll be interesting to see, how long it takes him to cool down, if he does cool down or if he doesn't. But there's a lot of really exciting guys in the system, just generally speaking. I mean, Nelson Velasquez continues to light it up. Alexander Canario is looking very good.
He's mashed this weekend.
Yeah. And Kevin Alcantara just got his first home run, and that guy's just the super athletic 6'6", 19-year-old that, give him a year or two, and I mean, he is just going to be a beast. So a lot of exciting stuff. James Triantos looking good. Ed Howard good. Ethan Hearn good. It's just so many different guys down there. So if you don't follow the minor league guys, now is probably a good time to do that. And we'll post things about them as they continue to progress on Cubs Insider as much as we possibly can. But yeah, so the Cubs go and they play 2 against the White Sox here. Not feeling great about it, even though the White Sox haven't started off real good. They go up against Michael Kopech and Lucas Giolito, who are pretty good. And I guess the positive thing is at least we don't have to be reminded of the fact that Dylan Cease is on the White Sox, because
that's a plus.
He's
Eloy Jimenez is hurt too, so we don't have to hear about that.
Yeah. And so I guess that's a positive, but you're not feeling great about how things are lining up here, because the Cubs have, of course, Drew Smyly and Kyle Hendricks, 2 guys that could come out and pitch really well. But if the Cubs don't get more than 1 or 2 runs, chances are they're not going to win. And then they go and they play the Dodgers. At least they're at home for these games. They play 4 against the Dodgers, or 3 against the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Starting on after the day off, starting on Friday. So, and then they do the West Coast trip. They do 4 against the Padres, and then they have the Diamondbacks mixed in there. It starts to get a little easier, I think, after the Padres series. But these next, was it 7, 8, 9 games?
You're not gonna be easy.
Gonna be rough. Yeah. So they have 3 against the D-backs. And then the Pirates, 4 against the D-backs, 4 against the Reds. It could be their first series sweep of the year. That'll be real interesting to see how that series goes.
Yeah, I just the middle of this month definitely is, again, it's the center of the Oreo, right? They got some hard stuff on the top and the bottom. It's a little soft and fluffy in the middle part. But they're all, when you're already 4 games under. I don't anticipate them to be any better than that by the time they get out of playing the Sox, Dodgers, Padres.
No.
So hopefully,
they will not.
No, I don't think so. And and who knows, man? Maybe something shakes loose with them. And it's weird.
We're praying for a miracle at this point, aren't we?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I would just like to see some guys kind of regress back up to where we thought they would be. Like, we saw so many kind of breakouts early with Suzuki and certain, and Happ has kind of maintained it. Hayward, probably some unsustainably good luck early.
His average has come down a little bit.
Yeah, now we're seeing Wisdom finally kind of bounce back. Again, he had a really rough start. Now he's bouncing back. Contreras has not been consistent. The pitching's been up and down. I'm very interested to see what we get from Drew Smyly, because again, as I fear that further regression from him is imminent. But
they're calling for rain tomorrow too. 90% chance of rain.
Good times. Good
stay
times.
Tuned. Stay tuned there in case that turns into a rain out. It says right now it's just going to be during the day, and at night is going to taper off. But we'll see. That can change. The weather in Chicago can be not that easy to predict sometimes. So we'll see what happens there. So maybe the game gets delayed, postponed. Who knows? But yeah, so we'll see what happens over the next 2 games. What are you thinking? How are you feeling? I think we did predict this the Brewers series correctly for the most part. I qualified it with saying, that if they didn't start Ortega for 2 of the games, that the Cubs would win 2. I was wrong, because they didn't start Ortega for 2 of the games. They did start him in the leadoff spot, I should say. They didn't bat him leadoff for 2 of the games, but they did still lose 2 games. So it was kind of like 50-50. You were spot on.
Yeah, and my pessimism has unfortunately been quite warranted for a while. So I'm going to stick with it. I do not like these matchups. I don't like the way they're playing. I think they're dropping both games to the Sox.
I hate to agree with you. Well, I mean, I don't hate to agree with you, but on this particular situation, I do hate to agree with you, but I do agree that the Cubs are going to get swept by the White Sox. And I'll even go so far as to say that the White Sox in one of the games are going to score more than 10 runs against the Cubs, unfortunately. And I don't know if it's going to come against. I hope it doesn't come against Hendricks, because, I mean, after that last outing, he really doesn't need another one like that. Who knows? Now, watch, the Cubs are going to go and sweep the White Sox because we said they wouldn't.
I would much rather have that than the other way around and us being like super optimistic every time and just have them keep laying an egg. So, I mean, hey, we set the bar low enough, then it doesn't matter if they clear it by an inch or a foot, it'll feel good. I am again, my concern for Hendricks continues to grow. He has like I said that right before opening day. He obviously proved me wrong on that one. He's had a couple of good starts, but he just, man, last season wasn't great. He's kind of there's times when he just looks completely washed. There's other times when things still look good.
If he gets the pitch mix right, but it's like there's such a small room for error in his pitch mix that, and then once it kind of gets off track, he just cannot get it back on track in game.
And you'll see it, like the curveball just won't be there sometimes. And if hitters will sit on change, and we've seen that go both ways, where sometimes he can just be so dominant with that changeup, but if it's not working the way he wants it to and hitters are sitting on it, and let's be honest, his fastball is not coming in there really hard enough to be that scary. So it's not as if you're sitting there and looking for 95 and trying to adjust down if it happens. When you're looking for 88, which, I mean, there's some hard throwing dudes out there whose changeups are harder than Kyle Hendricks' fastball, right? So at that level, I wonder how many guys, if that curveball is not really in there to help differentiate things and to kind of keep it. And he's, like I said, with a lot of guys, they use the curve to to keep the same handed. So if you're a right-handed pitcher, use that with right-handed hitters because you're afraid to throw the changeup to them. You want to use that for lefties. Hendricks obviously doesn't have that problem. And so if righties are able to sit on the changeup and it floats into the barrel and doesn't do what he wants it to, well, that's a problem, right? So if that curve is not really in there working, and if his two seam is not getting that little, if he's not running that in back door, front door, whichever case it may be, and he's not even, we've seen him be able to do that and just dart that thing in and fool hitters with it. But lately it feels like he's been catching way too much of the plate with some of those pitches. So hopefully that changes. We'll see.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no power pitchers in the lineup to kind of offset his kind of soft approach, and so it's just kind of he's got to be so perfect to be good, and he's been really perfect for I think a couple 2-3 games so far this season. But man, it's just a small, just no room for error there. So
yeah.
So yeah. Anyways, yeah, we're kind of a buzzkill. I'm actually going to blame you.
That's fine. I'll wear it. That's cool.
You have a jacket on, so
yeah.
Is it cold
absolutely.
there?
It's cool. It's warming up a little bit, but it was cool this morning, and then I think we might have some sunshine. It was in the 50s, low 50s this morning. Okay, I think it's in the low 60s now.
See, I'd say that's chilly. That's like
next week
chilly.
It's supposed to get up into the 70s, 80s. But the thing is, like, it rained a lot. Like, we had thunderstorms that came through Saturday night. So, like, we had a baseball game called like 3 innings in because there was lightning, and then big thunderstorms rolled through. Sunday, the games were all canceled because it rained, an inch or 2 inches overnight and just doused everything. Like really hard rain for a couple of hours. It wasn't like it rained all day, which still is bad. But we're supposed to get rain on like Tuesday and Wednesday and Friday and Saturday. So it's just that weird time of season. So it just kind of sucks.
Yeah.
It's gray,
Well,
gross. It's a
it'll
little
start to
funny
warm
today.
up soon. And then, the funny thing is that the people in and around Wrigley that have been going to the games are like, this is amazing because the tickets are so cheap.
Yeah,
We're
right.
back to the 80s, like the 1980s in
Yeah,
terms of
because you're getting them
pricing.
on the backside. This is the exact reason we got out of the season
Someone's
ticket
incurring
holding
that
thing.
loss, and
Yeah,
it ain't the
because
Ricketts.
somebody already paid for those. The reason they're cheap is because somebody already bought them, and now they just got to unload them for something. And that's where it's like, oh wait, you mean we paid whatever it was, $50 for this bleacher ticket, and now we got to sell it for $10 plus we've already incurred fees to list the thing. So
Yeah, at
basically, at
that
the end of
point,
the
you're
day,
just giving your money to the Ricketts family.
yeah, because they already got it on the front end, and they probably got some partnership deal on the backside with StubHub anyway, where they're kicking them something. And the folks from StubHub don't give a shit because they're selling it for whatever you had to pay them to host that. So
Yeah, it'll be
they come
interesting
out
to see
winning
what
either way.
happens if the Cubs continue to kind of, this downward spiral they feel like they're on. Like come June or July, what the stands on, like, say, a Friday or Saturday look like.
I'm very interested to see what happens with season ticket prices next year too, because I tell you what, they are bleeding them badly now with season ticket holders, and and a lot of that certainly I'm sure comes from like ticket brokers, right, who have gotten into the game, whether they bought it for people or what, because some of them might be getting out of it because it's just a bad investment for them because you have to put up all that upfront money and they're not seeing anything on the back end if you're selling everything at a loss. But then how many people are out there saying they don't trust ownership? Maybe maybe they're like us and they got into it thinking it would be cool and it didn't work out. And then you get to the point where you're like, this team isn't very fun to watch. And if I don't go, I'm losing money on those tickets, right? That's a big expense for most folks. And if you can't recoup any of that, if you're getting like Catalina Club all inclusive, all you can eat, all you can drink tickets for $75, like that's
cheaper than going out.
Yeah. Especially with
like
you
a
think
lot.
about it costs $13 for a beer at Wrigley, right? And like probably that much for an Italian beef. So right there's $26 if you only have one beer. You go down there, you get yourself 4, 5, 6 drinks over the course of a game. Dude, you made your money back. And then now, granted that it's like the Kohl's model where it's like on sale, save this much. No, I'm not saving anything because I didn't buy it and then bring it back and you gave me money. Like I didn't save anything. I still paid the cost of this thing. So I'm not, again, I would not pay $13 for a beer if I went out to a local bar. But if we're talking about the Cubs experience and we're talking about how expensive the tickets generally are, and you can get an all-inclusive one for $75, that's probably cheaper than if you just got a bleacher ticket for $10 and then went out and tried to get a couple beers and a sandwich or something else. You know what I mean? So, and you've got like the little club area seating and some outside stuff. So you could probably get 1914 tickets cheap by the time the season keeps going. That's a hell of a good deal because you're
That's
down
what
real
I'm saying.
close and get down underneath there to the thing.
I'm going to be going to some games just because it's fun to go to the game, and then if it's cheap and you can actually get in there, and hey, maybe the Cubs will win a game.
And you know what? There is a certain freedom that's involved when you know your team is out of it and they suck, and you actually don't invest yourself too heavily in the outcome of the game. And I don't want to say that you want your team to be
it's
bad.
Called a 3 hot dog, nacho, 5 beer freedom.
Yeah, it's because you just go and you can enjoy the afternoon of base. Like whether I go to a high school game or went to a college game the other day, it is. I love baseball and I love the romanticism of it, and I would prefer to see the Cubs be good. But with any of my teams, like if I know, or it's kind of like watching the NCAA tournament when I don't have a horse in the race anymore. It's fun to watch because I don't care who wins or loses. And I'm just watching baseball or watching basketball or watching, it could be football too, the playoffs, whatever. So, hey, you can get a cheap ticket to Wrigley and go watch even when the Cubs suck. Cool. And, at that point, we'll see. But I'm very, very interested to see how this plays with their season ticket prices moving forward, because this is not a good thing for the team.
Not a marketable product.
It's weird. It's almost like we
forward.
said that's what was going to happen, but
Oh well.
Shocker.
Okay, anyway, so we will circle back after whatever happens with the White Sox on Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll circle back on Thursday because that's a day off, and then kind of go from there. So I hope everybody has a good Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then we'll see you guys on Thursday. Okay.
Cool. See everybody
Okay.
then.
Sounds good. All right.